Amen. Grab a seat. And again, one more time, welcome to everyone here tonight. Thanks so much for being here. We love you guys, and we believe that God loves you and that you have a place to belong in his family and here. My name is Matt Dinsky. I'm the student ministry pastor here at Fellowship Greenville, and it is such a joy to be here with you tonight. I want to start tonight, already recognizing we're losing a lot of seniors after this week, and it's emotional, man. We walk with you guys for years, and just want to reiterate, we love you guys so much. We're so proud of you guys. And so this message in many ways is for everybody. It's from the Word of God, and it's going to apply to everybody. But for seniors especially, I want to challenge you guys to be thinking through the lens of this message in your next chapter of life with whatever comes as you look for life and what Jesus means in this next chapter. So a few years ago, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3, 2019, what is that, 2.5? I was up in Canada. I was in Alberta, and I was doing some hiking kind of in the back country there. Anybody ever hike in the Rockies before? Like not East Coast, Appalachian, but the Rockies. Kyle, I know you have. Jenny Ann, where'd it go? Oh, cool, man. You've been to Alberta? Sweet, dude. Yeah, go Canada, eh? And so I was up in Alberta doing some hiking in the backcountry there. And by backcountry, I mean like really backcountry, like no trails, no maps, no markers, no blazes, no signs, no nothing, like just out in the woods. And I was doing it with an organization, with an outfit, and that organization provided guides for us because they know, like, hey man, you're flying over here, you have no clue where anything is. Nothing's marked, nothing's blazed, so we're gonna provide you with a guide. And they paired me up, bless you. Yeah, you got a second one coming, or should I? We're done? Okay, yeah. They paired me up with a guide, and he was a younger guy, and I think they just figured like, hey, you're kind of young, he's young, you'll be able to keep up with him. And they were incredibly wrong. Like this guy, I mean, the Lord made him like half human, half gazelle. And this dude would just like bing, 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 like all over the mountainside and be like, yo, you wanna hike up that mountain? And like, not really, dude. And he'd be like, all right, come on. And so he was just full energy, full stamina all the time. And so he was my guide. And so we were just hiking around these mountains, and we would bushwhack up and climb to the top and hit these amazing, beautiful areas and just had a really nice time together. And he was kind of notorious for like, we'd work all day to get to the top of this one mountain. And then once we're up there and we kind of scan the landscape, he'd be like, oh, see that mountain over there? Do you want to do that one? And I'd be like, no, we just did this one. He's like, no, hey, like, let's go do that one, bud. And I'm like, no. Like, no, thank you. But we did. He's crazy, and we had a great time. So one day we're hiking, and we get to the top of this one mountain, and we're a little disoriented. And so up top, we're trying to see from there, like, how to get back to our car. And so, I mean, we drove miles out in the middle of nowhere. We're parked on the road, and then we've hiked up miles into the middle of nowhere, and we're trying to figure out, like, all right, we know we're south, and we know the car is south somewhere, and so we're up on this overlook, and we're looking down, and we're seeing, all right, like, if we make our way down the mountain here, we're gonna hit this thicket of trees. If we make it through that, oh, okay, we can cross this little field. Okay, there's a dry creek bed. Like, we're putting all these things together to create a mental map so that when we actually descend the mountain, we can get somewhat towards the area of our car. We know if we hit asphalt, like, we can find the car eventually. And so here's a picture kind of from where we were standing in that moment as I'm looking down into the valley. Do we have a picture? There it is. All right, thanks. All right, so I'm standing up on this area, and I'm looking down into this valley, and you can kind of see, I think that's a road cut way in the distance there. We know we're on that somewhere. Like, we know we're due south somewhere on that road. And so we're like putting together the mental map. We're up there where we can see everything, and it's sunny and beautiful and clear, and we're observing all the little landmarks, and we've got a plan in place, and it sounds good, it feels good. It's like, all right, once we go down though, we're gonna lose sight of all this. So we've really got to remember the order of all these things, and we felt good about it. And so around sunset or right when nighttime fell, we began our descent down. Now, I got an honest question for you guys. Everyone's fine in the woods until it hits nighttime. Anyone with me on that? Like, anyone get scared in the woods at nighttime? Like, you're fine, and then all of a sudden, once the sun's down, you're like, ooh, like, what was that noise? What is that? Did I hear a branch snap? Someone there to murder me? There's a clown, right? Like, we're all good until the clowns start coming out. Did you guys remember a few years ago when all those clowns were like just out. You know that started in Greenville? Yes, dude. Your old city is so weird. I remember because I just moved here. I lived here for 6 months, and the clown craze was happening, where these weirdos would dress up in clown costumes and just go stand somewhere with a knife and just like look at people. It's like, nah, fam, like, no. And that started in Greenville. So congratulations. Give yourselves a pat on the back. Anyway, yeah, gotta be known for something. Gotta be known for something, man. So we're up there and we've got the plan in place. Night comes and we start our descent. Well, of course, once we're off the mountain and once it's nighttime, everything looks different. So we've got these little flashlights, we've got these little headlamps, and you're able to see just a little bit in front of you, but it's woods at night and everything looks the same, and there's no trail to follow, and we're just really going by the memory of direction. Like it feels like we're moving this way. We didn't even have a compass. Like it feels like we're moving this way and we should probably turn this way now, and we're doing miles and miles and miles of this, and then all of a sudden these ominous clouds start to roll in, the thunder starts to bellow, and we're like, oh man. And so this huge storm kind of came upon us. And so now it's raining and it's dark and the wind's picking up and everything's getting louder and the wind through the trees is creating that like sound, and it's just all kind of building to this eerie, like, man, I just don't feel good right now. And all the trees are kind of creaking and they're like everything is just moving in this forest. And it's scary. Like, I'm not gonna lie to you guys, it's scary. And plus, I don't go into the Rockies very often, but if you ever go into the Rockies and you're from the East Coast like us, what do you hear? You hear story after story after story of bear attack, of mountain lion attack, of how they'll kill you. You don't even know they're coming, man. By the time you know they're on you, your jugular's already been, like you just hear all these like weird stories from people who have all these crazy attack stories, right? And so now all of a sudden they're all running through my mind like, what was that behind me? Like I'm looking with my flashlight everywhere, and I'm getting a little nervous because truthfully, if something happened to my guide in this moment, I'd have no idea how to make it back to the car. And really, we would just hunker down for the night if that were even a possibility. But we didn't have gear. I mean, we had like water and that's it. So I'm a little nervous. And I'm allowing the circumstances of that moment to kind of weigh on me, and I'm getting a little scared. I'm like looking around like, dude, I could totally see a mountain lion tearing me up right now. Like I'm just starting to become a little like, man, I don't enjoy this moment. I wish we were out of this moment. And I allowed all those circumstances to weigh on me and to become the emphasis of that moment. And so in that moment, what I began to realize was my guide, this young guy in front of me who knew these mountains, he hikes all over them all the time. My guide does not seem flustered. My guide seems confident. Like I would watch him and I would kind of look at his body language and think to myself, does he look scared? Does he look confused? Like, is he looking around like, man, was it this way or that way? Like, he seemed confident. He seemed like he knew where he was going. He seemed calm. And in fact, he was even like comedic. Like he was making jokes about things, and in the back, like, dude, just keep going, man. Like, let's move it, bro. We got miles to cover still. And I began to derive my comfort and my confidence from the posture of my guide. And I just kept saying in my head, like, dude, as long as his boots are in front of you and you're moving to follow, you're gonna be okay. Like that's what I kept telling myself. You guys will eventually find your car. And that feeling of lostness is not fun, but I just kept telling myself, as long as his boots are there and he's moving and you're following, you'll be okay. I began to find my confidence and my comfort through my guide. If we're honest, a lot of times in life, this is the picture we paint. We have plans in our heads, and they all look really, really good. Like we're standing at the mountaintop when it's sunny and easy and nice, and we can see the whole landscape of life, and we're like, oh yeah, if I do this and then go there and then turn there and then do that and that and that, yeah, my life would line up really, really great. And what we don't account for are the unplanned things, the circumstances that come along that you can't control, the storms that roll in, and getting lost and feeling like you've lost a sense of direction. And it's in those moments in life that we need a guide, that we need someone to go before us, someone who understands the landscape, someone whose sense of the moment and posture in the moment gives you a sense of confidence and comfort. Someone to follow and stay on their heels because you're sure that they can get you out and through. And for those who follow Jesus, we believe he is the guide. We believe he's the one. And so I want to look at a passage tonight out of the Gospel of John. This is maybe a familiar passage, but even though it's familiar, I would just encourage us to posture ourselves to receive. If you've heard it before, awesome. Ask God, what is in it that might be new for me tonight? What might you have for me tonight? And so it's John chapter 10, and this is about Jesus describing himself in a number of titles, but specifically the one that might be familiar to you is the Good Shepherd, and we're gonna get into that tonight. So John 10, starting in verse 1, Jesus says this, "Truly, truly, I say to you, he who does not enter the sheepfold by the door, but climbs in another way, that man is a thief and a robber. But he who enters by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. To him the gatekeeper opens. The sheep hear his voice, and he calls his own sheep by name, and he leads them out. When he has brought out all of his own, he goes before them, and the sheep follow him, for they know his voice. A stranger they will not follow, but they flee from him, for they don't know the voice of strangers." This figure of speech Jesus used with them, but they did not understand what he was saying to them. All right, so let's pause here. What's happening? Like, what has built up to this moment that Jesus is even using this figure of speech and using this parable, this story to teach from? So, long story short, there was a group of religious leaders that in that day called the Pharisees, and they claimed to know God and claimed to represent God to the people. In other words, they claimed, we are the shepherds of the people of Israel. We are the shepherds of God's people. And they made this claim pretty boldly, even though they didn't really lead the people well, even though they weren't really gracious or merciful or patient with the people, even though they didn't have much empathy or compassion with sinners, even though they really didn't care that much about the relationship they had with the people. They were far more concerned with their image from the people. And they're claiming to be shepherds, and Jesus is now using this parable, this figurative way of speaking, of using a story to prove a point. And he's talking to these religious leaders, and he says, "He who does not enter the sheepfold by the door, but climbs in another way, that man's a thief and a robber." So in a sense, he's calling the religious leaders of the day thieves and robbers. You guys have claimed to be shepherds, but your stance as the representatives of God has been found through a back door. You don't shepherd these people. And so he's really making a pointed statement to these religious leaders. But what is Jesus talking about culturally? All right, so culturally, shepherding was a profession of his day. It still is today in many parts of our country and around the world. But in this culture, it was just very, very common. And so when a shepherd had a flock of sheep, there were two places that you would shepherd your sheep. One would be out in a pasture, and the other would be in the city. And if you were in a city or a village, there was typically a communal pen, like a gigantic holding place for all the sheep of all the flocks and all the shepherds. And so if you're a shepherd out in the fields and you decide you want to come into a village or a city, you would bring your flock with you and you would herd them into this communal pen. And it's mixed up with all sorts of other sheep from other shepherds from around the area. And Jesus is saying the true shepherd, when he goes to get his sheep, he's gonna go to the front door. He's not gonna climb the back wall. He's going to the front door because he's the shepherd of the sheep. And the gatekeeper opens to him because the gatekeeper would recognize that he's the shepherd. And the sheep hear his voice and he calls out his sheep by name and he leads them out. And so this picture that Jesus is painting is that the shepherd comes into this communal sheep pen and there's hundreds of sheep. The shepherd has sheep in there, but they don't all belong to him. So how does he get his sheep out? Are they color-coded? Are they tagged? Are they branded? No. The sheep are so familiar with the voice of their shepherd because of the time that they have spent with him as their guide, that they know his voice and they know to trust him. Jesus says the shepherd goes into the pen and he calls his own sheep by name and he leads them out. They follow him because they know his voice. A stranger they don't follow because they don't know a stranger's voice. John says in chapter 4 that Jesus is saying he goes before them. Now this is significant. Jesus says the good shepherd calls his sheep by name. They know his voice. He knows his sheep. And when they come out, he goes before them. Jesus eventually likens himself to this good shepherd. But Jesus is saying the good shepherd doesn't drive his sheep out and allow all the sheep to go in front of him. A good shepherd will go in front of them. Why? Because if you're going to encounter danger as a shepherd, Because of your love and care and concern for your sheep, you don't allow them to go first. Right over that hill could be a wolf ready to devour them. No. The good shepherd goes before his sheep so that he can encounter every obstacle and every potential danger first to protect his flock. Jesus says the good shepherd knows his sheep by their names. Now, a lot of us in here, I think from time to time, struggle with feeling known, fully known, and fully loved. We desire to be fully known, but we're scared if we're honest, because if they fully know us, they won't really love us. And so we put on a mask and we play the game and we fake experiences and we kind of create this personality that's presented to everyone else that we think they're gonna love because we're also desperate for their love and affection. But the trap there is you can't be fully loved if you're not fully known. Like the version of you that they love is not really you, and so therefore you're not really loved because you're scared of being known. And you're scared that if they know you, they won't really love you. I mean, this is just the catch-22 of life. Jesus says the good shepherd knows his sheep. In fact, he knows them by name. And if you're in this room tonight and you're struggling to feel known, I want you to know Jesus knows you. And he knows your name. Jesus is teaching here on a personal level. This isn't some the shepherd knows kind of like what his sheep look like, and they've got like distinct characters. No. Each sheep in the flock of Jesus is named, and he knows your name. And just one chapter later, John 11, a friend of Jesus's would die, and Jesus marches right into his tomb and calls him out by name. The book of Luke, chapter 19, Jesus is walking through a town named Jericho, and he stands under the sycamore tree, and there's a man up in this tree waiting to see Jesus. Jesus looks up and calls Zacchaeus by name, even though they had never met. Jesus knows your name. He cares about you enough. He knows you enough. He loves you enough to know your name. It is personal for him. Jesus says the shepherd knows the name of his sheep, and he leads them out. He goes before them so that he can face all the obstacles and danger first. So here's what I want you to know. This is the first thing I want you to know tonight. Jesus guides his sheep. If you are in this world, if you are in this life, you're living this life, if you're transitioning from high school to the next chapter, if you're trying to navigate high school, if you're a sophomore or freshman right now, you're like, dude, I'm about to become an upperclassman soon. Like if you are navigating any aspect of life and you're like, dude, who do I look to? Who can be my guide? What example do I follow? Jesus is our guide. Jesus guides his sheep. He calls his sheep by name. He knows them deeply and intimately. He leads them out and he goes before them. Jesus is the one blazing the trail, going before his sheep so that he faces all the danger first, all the obstacles first. Jesus knows what you go through because he experienced it first. The book of Hebrews says he is not unable to sympathize with us because he has been tempted in every way like we are, and yet without sin. Jesus has endured the full face of humanity because God became man. He has done it first, and now he leads his sheep to follow. Jesus guides his sheep. Verse 7. So Jesus says again to them, truly, truly, I say to you, I'm the door of the sheep. That's kind of a weird description, right? Like, I'm the door of the sheep. The good shepherd analogy, we kind of get. Like, if I'm telling you what Jesus is like, and I was like, oh man, he's like a shepherd who loves and cares for his sheep, you'd be like, oh yeah, true, yeah, like bet, I get that. All right, yeah, shepherd, got it. But if I were like, oh dude, he's like a door. Jesus is like a door. You might be like, weird analogy, bro. Like, it's a weird title that he gives himself. Jesus says, I'm the door of the sheep. All who come before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not listen to them. I'm the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved and will go in and out and find pasture. Verse 10, the thief comes only to kill, steal, and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. So what's Jesus talking about here? Again, culturally, let's zoom in to the culture and context that Jesus is teaching in. So if you're a shepherd, there's two places to pasture: the city or village that has a pen, and then the countryside that has open fields and pastures. And when you went out to the countryside, when you went out to the fields with your flock, there were these like very, very primitive areas you could bring your sheep into. And they would be made of like a stone wall or sometimes like wooden walls. And it was kind of like the letter C, where it was almost a full circle, but there was one little gap that wasn't fully enclosed. And what the shepherd would do as he's out in the countryside, at the end of the day for bedtime, he would gather all of his sheep, he would herd them in, he'd bring them in into this one little gap in this thing, and they would enter this area surrounded by a wall. And then when it's time for bed, the shepherd would know, all my sheep are in the safety and protection of the wall here. There's only one way into this wall, and that's through the door, through this little gap. And then at bedtime, the shepherd would literally lay down in between that little gap, becoming the door itself. And by doing that, what the shepherd is doing is two things. One, the sheep cannot wander and go astray, because in order for them to get out, they would have to walk over me, and the shepherd would wake up, right? Like, no, stay in the pen, stay in the pen. But two, and more importantly, there's no way that a wolf or a predator can come and take one of my sheep without first going through me. There's only one way into the pen, and it's this one gap. And at the end of the night, the shepherd would lay in that gap and become the door to protect his sheep. And Jesus says in this passage, truly, I tell you, I'm the door of the sheep. All who came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep didn't listen to them. I'm the door. If anyone enters by me, he'll be saved, and he will go out and find pasture. And so Jesus is telling us two things about himself in this passage. He not only guides his sheep, but Jesus also protects his sheep. Jesus lays down in the gap. Jesus lays in the door. And if you are the sheep of Jesus, if you're in the flock or the family of God, I want you to know this, that Jesus protects you. I know that's kind of hard to imagine because it's like, wait, but he's not like here physically. Like, what do you mean he protects me? Jesus protects you. There's an entire dimension surrounding us, a spiritual dimension, and Jesus has authority over that dimension, and Jesus is protecting you. The book of Hebrews says that Jesus actually is interceding on your behalf. He is literally praying for you into the ear of the Father. Your name on Jesus' lips coming out to the Father. Jesus is interceding. He's praying on your behalf. Jesus protects you from potential harm and danger through his truth, through his presence, through his spirit, through his model, through the means that he gives us. Jesus protects you in this life. He leads you to safety, and he protects you. But he also says the sheep will go in, that's protection, and out and find pasture. And so Jesus doesn't just protect you, he provides for you. Jesus is the door that allows the sheep to go out and find pasture, food. Jesus protects you, he also provides for you. What does he provide? He provides life. Provides nourishment, spiritual nourishment. He provides every single thing we have. Scriptures say that every blessing comes from above. Jesus provides for you. The book of Ephesians chapter 1 says we have been blessed with every spiritual blessing in the heavenly realms. And it's all through Jesus. He protects you and he provides for you. And the most important thing he provides is in verse 10. The thief comes to kill, steal, and destroy. I have come that the sheep may find life and have it abundantly. Jesus gives us life, not like the world gives. The world gives life in temporary pockets, temporary thrills. Things are fun for a time, but they leave us feeling sad and hollow and shameful and regretful and in remorse. Jesus says, I've come to give life. I've come so that people discover their true selves. I've come so that people understand their identity and purpose and value in this life. I've come to give life. Well, how does Jesus give life to us? How does the Good Shepherd give life to us? Jesus gives us life by giving up his own life. Jesus is the shepherd who lays down in the door. And eventually, Jesus is the shepherd who laid down his own life for his sheep. He gives us life by giving up his own. Verse 11, Jesus says, I am the good shepherd. So now he brings it all to this one point. I am the good shepherd. I'm the shepherd I was talking about in those earlier verses that know his sheep by name. I'm the door. I am the good shepherd. And the good shepherd lays down his life for his sheep. A hired hand and not a shepherd who does not own the sheep sees the wolf coming and leaves the sheep and flees, and the wolf snatches them and scatters them. He flees because he's a hired hand and he cares nothing for the sheep. I'm the good shepherd. I know my own, and my own know me, just as the Father knows me and I know the Father. So Jesus says, I'm the good shepherd. I don't flee when danger comes. I'm not a hired hand. The wolves come and I stay and I lay down my life for the sheep. And look at this really, really interesting thing he finishes this passage with. I'm the good shepherd. I know my own and my own know me. Just as the Father knows me and I know the Father, I lay down my life for the sheep. Jesus says, just as the Father knows me and I know the Father, I know my own and my own know me. I want you to get this, guys, because this is huge. Are you in the room tonight and you're struggling to feel known? Are you in the room tonight and you're struggling to find value? You've been asking yourself questions like, man, does God really know me? Is God really close? Does God really care? Is God really there? Do I even matter? Do I have purpose? Jesus in this verse says this, that his relationship with God the Father, as he is known by the Father and knows the Father, that relationship is the exact same level of intimacy that he considers with you. I know my own and my own know me, just as the Father knows me and I know the Father. You cannot be any less known by Jesus than he is known by the Father. You guys get that? You guys get what he's saying there? You cannot be any less known by Jesus than he is known by the Father. And Jesus and the Father are one. The relationship between Jesus and his heavenly Father is one. It is inseparable. And Jesus is saying, just as the Father knows me, I know my sheep and they know me. You can't be less known by Jesus than he's known by the Father. God the Father knows Jesus as Jesus knows you. Do you matter? Yes. Do you have purpose? Yes. Does Jesus know you and care about you and love you deeply and passionately and intimately and willing to lay down his own life for you because of that? Yes. You are known. Jesus is our guide. He protects us. He provides for us. There's one more thing the Good Shepherd does, though. Because he loves us, the Good Shepherd corrects his sheep. Jesus corrects his sheep. Now you might be wondering, all right, dude, where'd you get that? Where did that come from? This entire passage, this whole John 10 passage, is a response, is a rebuttal to the Pharisees at the end of chapter 9. Jesus is correcting their view of him. Jesus is correcting their view of themselves. Jesus is correcting their understanding of God the Father and the scriptures and their role in this life. The book of Hebrews chapter 12 says, a father, because he loves his children, will discipline his children. You guys know I have some kids. I don't know if you know that or not. Is that news to you? Yes? Okay, I have some kids. No, I know. You had no clue, but I do. I know. I have 3, actually. And because I love them, I want them to learn. I want them to learn that it's not okay to be mean to mommy sometimes. It's not okay to be unkind. It's not okay to do certain things. And if I don't help them learn, then I'm actually setting them up for failure. And so a good shepherd, a loving shepherd, corrects his sheep. That sheep has gone astray. That sheep missed the pen. Let me go and get them. I need to correct them back to where I need them to go. Jesus is our good shepherd. And if you're in this life, and especially if you're about to transition into a really big chapter of life, and you're wondering, man, who do I follow? Because really up until this point in life, you've had physical guides, your parents, your friends, your pastors. But if you're wondering, man, who do I follow now? It's Jesus. It's always been Jesus. Jesus is the good shepherd. He guides us, he provides for us, he protects us, and he corrects us. Those are the four things that a good shepherd does for his sheep. And Jesus says, I am the good shepherd. And so just as I was in the mountains and I was focused on the circumstances and the storm and the darkness and the what ifs, what might be in the woods that I can't see, what might get me these potential threats that actually don't exist, but I'm imagining them to exist. Just as I was there and eventually reached this conclusion, I'll just stay on the heels of my guide. And his posture will bring me comfort, and his posture will bring me clarity. I will stay on the heels of my guide. There's an old song, an old hymn. It says, Jesus, where you lead, I will follow. And maybe that should be our prayer tonight and in our lives. Jesus, you're my guide. You're my good shepherd. And where you lead, I will follow, no matter where. So I'd like to close tonight out in a little bit of a different way, in an interesting way, because it is a significant night with our seniors. I would like to invite our seniors into a time of prayer where I and we get to pray over you. And so if you're a senior in this room and you'd like to, I'd like to invite you to come down front and center, please, so that we can pray over you guys in your transition in this next chapter of life. If you are a small group leader in the room and you've invested in these seniors, please feel free to come down and join us as well. Seniors, if you feel comfortable, come on down. Thank you, Becky. Appreciate that. All right, right here, you guys can circle up, but not too tight because, Delta variants and whatnot. Who knows? Yeah. There's something going on. Hey, guys, come on in. All right. So I'm going to pray over you. Rachel's going to pray over you. As long as we don't get choked up, we're going to make it through this. You guys.
Carl said he would pray.
Yeah. You guys hold a special place in our heart. And for everyone else in the room, part of being in this ministry is belonging to the family of God and to the flock, like the sheep. Right? Like this is our pen, so to speak. And so if you're in the room, I would like to invite you just to maybe stretch your hands out, your arms out, just in the direction of our seniors here and join us in a posture of prayer as we begin. So you guys can go ahead and extend your hands, extend your arms, and I'm going to lead our prayer. Rachel, you want to close us? And if you can't make it through it, then man, we'll just sit in silence and amen it. All right. Father, we thank you so much for this group of people right here, and they're so incredibly special to us. They have navigated years in this ministry and a lot of conversations, a lot of hours spent, a lot of coming to you, Jesus, as our guide and provider and protector and corrector, and a lot of walking with each other and through some really difficult and confusing circumstances. And Jesus, now this group is about to transition into a new chapter of life, something that's coming next. And that's an exciting time. And so I pray that you would help them fully embrace this transition and kind of extract every ounce of sweetness that's still left for them in their high school career, but also be looking towards what's about to come in the next chapter. Jesus, your word says that you've already gone before them, that you're blazing the trail, that you're already in front of them, leading them and guiding them. And I pray, Jesus, that they would look to you as their guide, that they would be on your heels following you, because you lead us to good places and you protect us from danger and you provide for us. And Jesus, you correct us when we go astray, which we go astray a lot. And you give us grace in those moments. Jesus, your word says that you are the good shepherd, and that you have come to give us life and give it abundantly, to give the best life imaginable and possible, and that life is given because the good shepherd was willing to lay down his own life. Jesus, we find our life through your life. And I pray over this group of seniors especially tonight that they would discover life in Jesus. They're about to be told a whole bunch of stuff. They're about to be shown a whole bunch of things they've never seen, or experienced a whole bunch of things they may not have experienced before. And there's going to be a lot of ideas and a lot of whispers in their ears trying to convince them that there's a better life out there, outside of Jesus, that the world has a better way of doing things. But Jesus, we believe that you offer the best life because you are the shepherd. You guide us. You go before us. You provide for us. You bring us to green pastures. You protect us from danger. You correct us when we're wrong. Jesus, you know us deeply and intimately. And we have a God who cares to know us and love us. And so I pray that we would become followers, true followers of the shepherd. That we would walk with you always, Jesus. That each and every one of these seniors would walk with you, and that not one would fall away.